2 days ago, the Ladybird web browser made quite a bit of news with a major investment and the establishment of a new non-profit organization to build a from-scratch web browser. It's pretty doggone awesome. This was positive news, non-controversial, non-political, extremely nerdy. This is the kind of news that every nerd should be able to rally around and just get plumb excited about, even if you think the concept of building a web browser engine from scratch with a little tiny ragtag group is foolhardy and not likely to succeed. It's still a fun story and still something that people should get excited about. Unfortunately, within hours of the spotlight being directed at Ladybird, a group of activists launched an all-out assault on the open source web browser by smearing it as, I'm not joking here, transphobic, misogynistic, and this is absolutely not a joke, this is 100% real, suggesting that the Ladybird developers actively support and promote human slavery. All of this is actually being done, and it's crazy. Hundreds of posts, not a few, not a handful, not a couple of people, but hundreds and hundreds of posts repeating such smears, among others, with one tech publication declaring a total boycott of Ladybird because of it. And this wasn't just random individuals across nameless, anonymous social media platforms. This was tech journalists who should know better. This was leaders of major open source projects and foundations. It was crazy. Now, what vile deed were the developers of Ladybird guilty of, which necessitated such an intense response, you ask? I'm going to tell you. The Ladybird team stated, wait for it, hold on, hold your horses, you ready to hear what they said? They said that Ladybird was a purely technical project. That's it. That was their crime. That being technical. That was their crime. This is absolutely not a joke. Here's all the details here. All right. So when the Ladybird browser initiative was launched, just less than a week ago now, their team included a very small statement on ideologically motivated changes. Okay, I'm going to read this to you. I'm going to read the entire statement here so you know exactly where they're coming from. Quote, "This is a purely technical project. As such, it is not an appropriate arena to advertise your personal politics or religious beliefs. Any changes that appear ideologically motivated will be rejected." End quote. That's the whole thing. Like, no, you tell me, you read that. What? Where did the attacks come from? All right. So this seems to me to be incredibly reasonable, right? A software engineering project, it remains focused on software engineering. However, a number of activists decided to do a little digging and found a 3-year-old suggested documentation change in a different but related software project where the word he was suggested to be changed to the word they, right? This was one specific change. I've got a screenshot here, and if you go over to the article over at lunduke.locals.com, I've got links to the GitHub pages and everything, so you can go read up on all this yourself. Now, the person who created that suggested change in the Serenity OS project, which Ladybird used to be a part of, that person had never contributed to that project before and was a completely unknown entity to the existing developers. And he considered that change, the person who suggested it, to be a, quote, minor nitpick to change one word that wasn't in his view, quote, exactly the best. Now, this change was rejected, right? This change was rejected with the following statement. "This project is not an appropriate arena to advertise your personal politics," end quote. And that was that, right? No controversy erupted. No end of the world thing. No conflict. No conflict at all. It just was like, oh, okay. And everyone just moved on until this week. Now, mind you, that was several years ago. And this week, when the news spotlight was directed at Ladybird, oh my word, did the activists pounce on this tiny little one-word change that didn't happen. Thus, the attacks begin. Now ask yourself, what would be the appropriate response to whatever this is. Now, a denied 3-year-old request by one person who did not have any involvement in a project to change one word that was a, quote, minor nitpick. Well, what would the appropriate response be? Well, for the writer of osnews.com, the only reasonable response would be a complete ban on reporting anything about Ladybird and deleting all existing articles. He said, quote, this is the guy that runs osnews.com. Well, that makes the number of popular projects OS News refuses to report on grow once more. I'm leaving a lot of clicks and income on the table by not reporting on them, but whatever, I don't care. I'd like to not be a dick or promote dickitude. There's no list somewhere except for in my head. Went one step further and deleted the most recent news story about Ladybird from OS News, because they initially covered it because it's a big, exciting, and fun story, and then they went and deleted it. It was still the most recent item, and that felt bad. I posted it before the new information came to light. And this same individual from OS News went on multiple rampades and tirades about this story, and it was intense. It was intense. And if you asked a variety of activists over on Mastodon, the Fediverse of all social networks, oh my heaven, it is a den of craziness. It is a den of crazy activism where people just attack people constantly. It's crazy over there. It's almost like all of the people who run all of the big foundations, the tech journalists, the creators and lead developers on major open source projects, as soon as they create a Mastodon account, they just become unhinged. They start just yelling and screaming and hurling accusations, and they say the craziest stuff over there. It's off the charts. So if you asked a variety of activists on Mastodon, the Ladybird lead developer should be smeared as a transphobe. as in this particular statement, quote, the Ladybird dev is a transphobe. I just looked at that screenshot because it was just so on the nose. And you'll note that at no point has the Ladybird team ever mentioned anything regarding trans issues at all. Not one statement. So the Lunduke Journal looked high and low. I scoured every commit and post and video I could find. I found absolutely nothing even remotely resembling any of that. And yet the label of transphobe is liberally applied. Liberally. What's funny is there are people who identify as trans that have been over the years contributing to Serenity OS and Ladybird. And you can find videos of them doing joint videos with the lead developer. There's nothing bad ever said. It all seems pretty happy. Everyone just is focusing on being a technical project, but that wasn't a problem in the project at all until now. And misogynist. The misogynist, they're throwing that word around as well, often accompanied by swear words. Here's one quote also from Mastodon. While Ladybird is trending, keep in mind the devs are misogynist and transphobic beeps. And then a smiley face with a 0 over the eyes. I don't know what that means. I linked to a bunch of the other attacks over on the article. We're not going to go through them all because it's all just variations on a theme, but there's tons of them. And if you search for them, you'll find tons more. It is hundreds of them. You'll find a bunch of them on Twitter. You'll find tons of them in various forums and chat servers, and a huge tidal wave of them over on Mastodon. It's tons. It's hundreds. It's a crazy number. And it's not just from random anonymous people. It's from a lot of times people who are tech journalists and the like. It's crazy. But it doesn't stop there. Okay, does that make any sense to label Ladybird as misogynist and transphobic? No, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's just made up gobbledygook just in order to attack this project, right? But what if they could make it even more ridiculous? Well, they tried. Just to kick it up a notch, some activists even began suggesting that the Ladybird project was, because of their use of software version control systems, advocating for human slavery. This is not a joke. I'm going to read some of this quote to you because this wasn't the only one like this, but I liked this one because it attempted to logic twist human slavery into it in the best way, I felt. Quote, When I looked at the Ladybird repository earlier today, it immediately caught my eye that the main branch was still called master. Now it has become clear why. No, this is definitely not because of legacy code, which would make renaming the branch to be too hard or some excuse along those lines. This was most certainly intentional. Intentional because Ladybird is, quote, not political, which of course means it is highly political for straight, white, cis men from Silicon Valley who hang out on X. I don't even know what to say about that. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. This is... I mean, the insinuation is clear that master, by using the master, that Ladybird is somehow promoting and supporting human slavery because they are white cis men and maybe white supremacists who hang out on X, which is going to be, you know, also a negative in this context. I guess they're declaring... And again, this wasn't even the only one that went this route. It was crazy. It was crazy. So they're transphobic, misogynistic slave owners? All because they wanted to be a non-political project. Holy heavens. At one point, responding to one of the various attacks, which I also linked to in the article, the lead developer of Ladybird, Andreas Kling, made a short statement on X. Hi, nice of you to pile on. Responding to the person issuing yet another common generic attack that was along the lines of the ones you've already seen. I have absolutely nothing against gender-neutral language, talking about, of course, this proposed document change going from he to they or whatever. He says, he continues, I am, however, against outsiders doing drive-by pull requests, like a submission for a code change, with ideological motivations. If a regular contributor had made these edits, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. Could I have communicated this better in 2021? You bet. That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. That was his statement. And here's the thing. Andreas Kling, the lead developer of Ladybird, making that statement, right, which would seem to be, if not an apology, at least a bit of a, oh, my bad sort of a thing. It did not stop the attacks. The attacks continue to be posted across social media still. I mean, after this statement came out, they started quoting him and saying, oh, get him. And then they just continued after that. They're still continuing. It's crazy. So what is the source of this hate, right? Transphobe, misogynist, slave owner. That's just a sampling of the insults and accusations, of the hate being hurled at the Ladybird team. And as is plainly evident from what we've just covered, those attacks are not based in reality, right? They're just simply not at all. None of the quoted statements or actions from the Ladybird developers could even come close to justifying the accusations being thrown around. Not even close. Which begs the question, where exactly is this hate coming from? Well, it turns out we've seen these tactics before. And interestingly, we've seen some of these people before as well. Okay, so buckle up. Just 24 hours ago, as of the writing of this article, which was 2 days ago, the Lunduke Journal published a story detailing how a group of political activists had conducted a purge, their words, of people whom they believed were not sufficiently pro-trans from within the Nix OS project. If you haven't seen the show around that or read the article, go ahead and over to lunduke.locals.com. It's all over there for free. Now, and some of those individuals who conducted or supported that purge, where they did just a mass banning of people from within Nix OS, are also at work here attacking the Ladybird web browser. Many of the same people. One activist named Kafka FK, seen below in this screenshot, within the GitHub repository for the developer being attacked of Ladybird, celebrating the fact that other activists, which were all organized on the Fediverse, on Mastodon, right? That's where they just seem to whip each other into a frenzy, had arrived to harass the Ladybird developer. There's just a quick screenshot. I linked to this so you can go check it all out yourself. Basically, I linked to the GitHub page. And a bunch of people organized themselves on the Fediverse, right? And encouraged people to go over to GitHub, to these GitHub repository requests, and just pile on and criticize and attack and attack and attack. And here's this Kafka FK person say, "Hi, Fedi," and a little wavy thing, and 36, lots more after that. Give it a little heart because it's just a giant mountain of people pulling over just to yell at this Ladybird developers, right? Now, that same activist, Kafka FK, had spent time within the NixOS project, both leading up to and during the purge of political undesirables, like links to all of that stuff, pushing for bans of people who were deemed insufficiently pro-trans. Let's go ahead and look at some screenshots here. The top screenshot you'll notice is from the Serenity OS project, which is where the Ladybird browser was incubated, and the Kafka FK individual just jumped in there just this week to pile on and yell and criticize and just spread hate. And then below, the same exact person, Kafka FK, from earlier this year back in the NixOS project, so applying to be a committer and moderator to remove people from the NixOS project during the purge. In fact, multiple key players within the NixOS purge have been actively posting and sharing the anti-Ladybird attacks. It's crazy. It's a lot of the same people. And time after time, we see many of the same tactics in addition to many of the same people. So many projects have been affected by this in one way or another. SUSE and OpenSUSE, Hyperland, Asahi Linux, Elementary OS, NixOS, and now Ladybird. And most of the time with a very consistent pattern. Number one, people who are not actively vocally supportive of trans activities are attacked, smeared, and vilified, typically with dishonest, libelous statements, as is the case here, because I don't think anyone from the Ladybird project is promoting human slavery. Number two, no matter what sort of apology or justification or attempted appeasement is made by those being attacked, the attacks will continue. Always. They never stop. In any of the cases outlined, not once. And number three, eventually, typically quickly, sometimes almost immediately, the attacks escalate into calls for people to step down or be banned in some way. Now, while there are some minor variations from case to case, the overall patterns remain strikingly similar and seemingly escalating in frequency, with 3 significant attacks in the last few months alone. In fact, if recent history is any indication, we're likely to see additional attacks involving open source software projects and companies by the trans political activists in the near future. As long as their tactics continue to have even the smallest amount of success, and as long as those being attacked fail to fight back, the trans political activists will not stop. They will continue to attack and hurt people. So this is ongoing. Now, at this point, the Ladybird project is in a better state than many of the other projects, right? Than NixOS or OpenSUSE, right? Where mass bannings have already occurred, where those projects have been essentially destroyed and sent into total chaos from the inside out because the people perpetrating this strange sort of trans political activism managed to get inside the project. So the Ladybird project's in a little better state than many of them because they don't have that happening right now, right? They don't have a public governance structure where a whole bunch of other people have come in and forced developers out yet. That doesn't mean they won't try, though, and we're still early days in this. If the patterns that we've already seen with OpenSUSE and Asahi and Elementary and NixOS and all the rest of them continue, we will see at least some attempts or increasing frequency calls for people to be banned and purged from Ladybird and Serenity OS as well. And we probably will be seeing a lot more of these in the days and weeks and months to come. It's terribly disappointing to see this sort of thing happening. If you're a nerd, if you're a computer nerd, you want to see people to be able to build the types of software projects that make them truly exciting, right? Excited, that fill their hearts with joy, because I believe firmly that computers should bring us together, should fill us with joy. If we are nerds, we should be able to nerd out together about our common computer love, right? Our love for the history of computers, of weird operating systems and computer architectures and all of it. No matter what the rest of our background is. If you were anything like me, you were a nerd as a kid. And as a nerdy little kid, you got bullied and picked on by a lot of other kids. But you always had that safe place of you could hang out with the other nerds. You could hang out with the nerds and be nerdy. It didn't matter if you had the same religion. It didn't matter if you had the same skin color. It didn't matter if you were the male or female. It didn't matter what. It didn't matter what politics your parents had. None of that mattered. You could focus on the thing that brought you together, and that was that common nerdery. It is a massive bummer to see that not happening now. And what's interesting is I'll continue to publish these sorts of stories. And many people will call it out as, oh, extremely political, right-wing Lunduke posting extreme right-wing, alt-right, QAnon, blah, blah, blah content. And the reality is, you'll notice I'm not telling anyone who to vote for. I'm simply pointing out when groups and leadership of software projects, of computer projects, of open source projects enact extreme hatred, bullying, bigotry, and discrimination, and destroy the nerdiness that we all love. That's what I call out. And because of that, they will continue to attack me just as they attack all of these other people. And they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep doing it because no one else is calling them out. This was a big story this week. When the Ladybird browser initiative was launched just this last Monday, it was a big story. It's an interesting story. It involved the original founder of GitHub, who isn't involved with GitHub anymore, or Microsoft, but the original founder of GitHub, and $1 million being put into it, and a new browser engine. I mean, so much. It's an interesting story, and people began to cover that story. But do they cover the crazed hate that those developers are getting by these crazy unhinged activists? Do they cover the other tech publications that are boycotting Ladybird because of this weird unhinged activism? No, they don't cover it at all. Just like all the other stories of Nix OS and OpenSUSE and Elementary and Asahi and Hyperland, we see so many things happen where people are being extraordinarily discriminated against, and the other tech publications don't cover it. The Lunduke Journal is going to keep covering it no matter what, no matter how much they attack me, no matter how much no other tech publication is willing to touch it, for a wide variety of reasons. We're going to keep covering it. So I want to say to everyone who's being attacked and bullied, my recommendation to you: do not apologize when you did nothing wrong. Do not apologize. Do not give in. Say no. Stand up. And if you need help doing that, reach out to me. I will stand in front of you and we will yell at these unhinged, dishonest political activists together, because it is not okay, and it won't stop until people stop them from doing it, until it is made to be so widely unacceptable that they won't do it anymore. Thank you, by the way, to all of the supporters of the Lunduke Journal for making this possible. One of the reasons I'm able to do this is I don't take any money from any tech company. No big tech influence can occur here at the Lunduke Journal because I'm supported entirely by subscriptions from all of you. Go to lunduke.com. At the bottom left-hand side of that page, you'll see a little link on how to subscribe and support the Lunduke Journal. Bunch of options in there. Pick whatever suits your fancy. There's different types of subscriptions. Grab a free subscription. Just support the Lunduke Journal, spread the word about what we do, and let's make the world a better place. All right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.